This is for all of my nail friends who cannot draw and have been wanting to learn stamping, but have felt so intimidated. What's up, nail crew? It's Nicole, your fellow nail obsessed DIYer. This one is all about stamping. If you are somebody who has been looking at stamping and thinking, oh my gosh, this looks so cool, I'd love to do it, but it looks so hard, let me be the first to tell you, I got you. Take my hand and we are going to learn how to do stamping. And I'm going to show you how easy it is, give you all the tips and tricks that have allowed me to do stamping for the past couple years and do it with ease. Because when I first started stamping, I was horrible. All right. I literally was so horrible that I gave up for an entire year. If that is you, that's how you're feeling, then stay tuned. The first thing that I like to do underneath my stamps is I like to mainly dip. So if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. And you know that I love to do dip manis because I just feel like there are so many colors, so many different options, and you can do so much with them. I'm actually going to do two different kinds of stamping today. On the left hand, I'm going to teach you guys how to reverse stamp. And on the right hand, I'm going to teach you how to do layered stamping. And both of them have their own little nuances, but the basics are similar. So once you guys get down the basics, you will be like, holy crap, how have I been avoiding stamping all this time? It's so much easier than I thought. But this is how we're going to start. Now you can do, if you don't want to do dip as your base, you can use nail polish, you can use gel polish, you can use builder gel, whatever you want as your base is great. When I'm doing dip as my base, I like to do 2 layers of the color and then 1 of clear because I always keep builder gel down or rubber base down on my natural nails just as an overlay. Once in a while I do builder gel extensions or do full cover tips sometimes with builder gel, but for the most part, I just have builder gel or rubber base down on my natural nails. And I already have my apex built with that, so I don't need to worry about any of that, so that I can just focus on getting my dip colors on and then getting into all the fun stamping. Now, some tips for doing dip powder, if this is what you want to use as your base. You want to make sure that you're applying your dip base really thin. Your dip should never be thick. Your dip layers should never be thick. You always want to aim for a higher number of thinner dip layers than a lower number of thick dip layers. So thicker dip layers can lead to chipping, lifting, cracking, all the stuff that we don't want. So if you're somebody that just dips on your natural nails, you probably are going to need anywhere from 4 to 6 layers. If you're dipping on your natural nails, what I used to do before I used builder gel and rubber base as my base, I would do 2 layers of clear, 2 layers of color, and then 1 layer of clear. So it was like a dip sandwich almost, right? Like you were using the clear to like sandwich in your dip. Something that you want to do to get those layers really thin is you want to wipe off a majority of the dip base on the inside of the bottle. Like when you're pulling it out, you know, you have like the bottleneck that comes up, wipe off a majority on the inside of that before your brush even fully comes out of the bottle, because that's going to help you keep your dip base as thin as possible. You only need enough base on your brush that you can cover your nail. You don't need so much dip base that it is like flooding your cuticles and your sidewalls. That is definitely a big no-no. Something that I totally was not doing when I first started. I was putting way too much dip base down. I was doing too thick of layers and I had a lot of lifting. Now, I also was using crappy products. That's going to make a big difference too. And I will argue this with anybody. Like I've had people, you know, actually come at me and be like, that's not true. Da, da, da. I use this brand and that brand. From my personal experience and talking to, at this point, literally thousands of mostly women, some men who dip their nails, and over the past like 5.5 years, product quality makes such a huge difference. If you want your nails to last a long time, if you want them to look good, if you want it to be easier to, that's something else for me that I've noticed. Like it is way less work to make good liquids and good powders look good. It is way harder to make low quality liquids and low quality powders look as good, all right? And we're doing this at home. Like we're not professionals and we don't have a ton of time, right? Like most of us went into this because we didn't like going to a salon or we didn't have the time to go to a salon. So if you're doing your own nails, you want the products that are going to allow you to have the longevity, to have the nicest look, to really work well. So, you know, just my reasoning as to why I always like to use certain dip liquids and dip powders. The ones I'm using in this video, the dip liquids are all from OG Dip Powder, and so are the powders. And I'll make sure that everything I use is linked in the description, all the colors, the liquids, all the little fun things like the The dip cups that I'm using, they're from SJ3, all that stuff. Everything is always linked, even if I forget to say that. So something that you do want to do when you're dipping is for solids and shimmers, you're going to get much better results if you pour the powder over. And then once that powder dries on that layer, then you take a stiff nail brush and brush off any excess. This is also keeping your layers thin and going to keep it from getting like really thick and weird. One of the other things that you want to do is you want to apply clear as your last layer, because once you activate the clear, now you brush off the excess clear too once it's dry, then you activate it, and then you can go in and buff your little heart out. And if you're using high quality liquids and high quality powders, you're not going to have to do a lot of buffing, okay? I basically do a little buff with these big flexible files. Some people like to use smaller buffing blocks, but your girl's got some huge hands. So for me, flexible files are it's just are a go-to, because it's just a giant buffing block. And with my big hands, it just works so much better. Now, I do like to also take an e-file and go around my cuticles and sidewalls after I've buffed, just to really make sure that my cuticle lines look so nice and clean and give it that like quote unquote perfect cuticle line that we're all going for, because I can't do it without an e-file, okay? Some people can do this beautiful application. They just gently file around with like a hand file or something, and boom, they've got this like perfect cuticle line. That's not me. That's never going to happen. So I did learn how to use an e-file. This step is really important to actually clean off your nails once you get all of the filing shaping done. I use 70% isopropyl alcohol and it works great. Then your nails dry a little bit and you can start in the stamping. And we're going to start first with getting our basic stamp image picked up so that we can do the reverse stamping. So reverse stamping is literally coloring into the image. So you pick up your base image and then you'll let it dry for a while. So I'm going to talk about how to pick up an image. When I was picking up those images that were larger and had like a lot of open space, so I did a bunny rabbit and like little flowers on grass. When you're doing something like that, you want to just have enough polish to cover the image, and you want to scrape quickly and firmly at a 45-degree angle. You want to roll the stamper over the image in the opposite direction that you scraped. Then I usually take some masking tape and pull off any of the extra stamping polish that gets on it and just let it dry. So once it dries, you can move on to your other one. So this is layered stamping, and layered stamping is the same basic concept, but the difference is that the bottom layer is typically a bit thicker. So I picked these Easter eggs specifically because one, it's spring, and two, because I wanted to show you when you're doing a design like that Easter egg that's a very full image, it doesn't have any open space, you don't want to scrape hard. And this was something that I kept messing up. When you're doing a full image like an Easter egg or something like that, you do barely scrape down. So you're really scraping almost flat to the plate, and you are just gently going over that image with the scraper to get the stamping polish over the image, and you gently roll over. That's how you're going to pick up those thicker images, those ones that don't have any blank space in them. And once you get that base down, that's like a thicker image like the Easter egg, you pull off the extra stamping polish that got on your jelly stamper with your masking tape, and then you go in and you can do the other pieces that go on top of it, the layers. You do the same as you would have done for this reverse stamping, because they're typically smaller images, they're more detailed. So you want to put just enough polish down to cover the image. You scrape at a 45-degree angle quickly, firmly, and gently roll over it. And then take that masking tape, get off any of the excess stamping polish that got on the stamper around your image, and roll it right on. Now, I don't even need to use any kind of base coat, any kind of sticky base when I'm doing layered stamping, because I'm stamping quick enough onto my nail that I'm making sure that the image is still wet. So that's something that's really nice that some people like about layered stamping, is because you don't have to wait for things to dry. You're just, moving like, and if it doesn't, let's say you pick up the second part of the stamped image and it looks weird, just don't apply it to your nail. Wipe off your plate with acetone again and try again. That is huge with stamping that I did not realize. Okay, stop panic stamping. I was panic stamping for so long, and that's why it was making me struggle. And now we're jumping into the reverse stamping. And I have these little like paper nail art palettes that I found actually on TikTok shop. And they have them on Amazon too. They're paper nail art palettes from McCart. I will make sure those are linked too. And all the stamping supplies, everything. My image is fully dry. So I take some of whatever stamping polishes I want to use to color in. And then I put a bunch on the little nail art paper palette here. I use a toothpick. Some people like to use some kind of dotting tool. My hands are way too shaky to use a dotting tool. So once in a while, I use my nail art brushes, but I just didn't happen to have any clean. So like the really, really thin ones, I love those, but they were all just dirty. So toothpicks work great. You don't have to spend a ton of money on nail art supplies. And you can use that money instead to like buy more stamping polishes and stamping plates, stuff like that. All that you're doing with the reverse stamping is you're coloring in the image. So I typically go color by color, pick a color to start with, and then that's what I'm filling in. What's so nice about doing reverse stamping is that if you can color something in, you can reverse stamp. Once you get that initial image picked up, all you're doing is coloring it in. Something that you want to be really careful when you're doing the reverse stamping is you want to barely dab that polish onto the image. If you press the polish that you're like coloring in with onto the image that's on the stamper hard, then you're going to accidentally pick up that, main initial image. And we don't want to do that, right? Like we worked so hard to make sure that we picked up the image nicely. So when you're coloring in with the stamping polish, do it super gently. Set your reverse stamped images that are fully covered in, set those aside, and then make sure that you go in with a smudge-free top coat all over your layered stamps, and because that has to fully dry before you can put any dip liquids top coating on. Now for reverse stamping, part is a little bit tricky, and this took me some time to get used to. I like to use Maniology sticky base. You need some kind of sticky base to apply your reversed image down because it needs to be sticky to get that image to stick to it, right? So I've tried some other brands and I just couldn't get the timing right. With Maniology's sticky base, for me, it's about 20-30 seconds, and I can feel what the sticky base should feel like. It should be sticky, like definitely sticky, but not wet and not dry. So I literally use my finger like to touch around the edges of my nail to know when the tackiness is just right so that when I press the stamp down, the reverse stamp, that it sticks really nice. Something that you definitely want to do when you're applying that reverse stamp is instead of just squishing it down and pulling the stamper up, you want to rock it back from side to side to make sure that you're giving all of the stamped image a chance to really grip onto that sticky base. Now, I didn't used to do that, and I would get real frustrated because I would pull the stamp off real fast, and sometimes part of the stamped image would come with it. It wouldn't stay on the sticky base, even though it was the right sticky level. So what I found was really like rolling the stamper back and forth and really trying to press it in. Like you don't like press so hard that you're moving the image, but you want to press hard enough that you're giving the reverse stamp a good chance to grip down on all the sticky base. And then you do the same thing that you do for the layered stamping. You apply a smudge-free top coat over and let it totally dry. And once that's totally dry, then you can go in with your dip liquids like normal. And if you're like me and you like to use dip top coat, this is going to be a game changer for being able to do stamping nail art without sacrificing your dip top coat. As long as that smudge-free top coat completely covers your stamped image and it is fully dry, like 100% dry, then you just do your normal dip top coating steps. You just have to follow the steps that whatever brand of dip liquids you're using tells you to do, because you don't want to use another brand's steps to do the top coating. The timing of the activator and the dip top coat is very specific. So for OG dip powder, I make sure that I follow their top coating. You do heavy activator, thumb to pinky, then you wait 10 seconds, go in with your first layer, and then go with the second. And if you're still struggling with how to apply dip powders or doing your top coating, then make sure you check out this next video where I'll give you my top 12 tips for the perfect dip mani. Thanks for joining me today, Nail Crew.